South Carolina.
Thank you, madam. We're here today because the NLRB has once again overstepped the line. Now, I'm not sure if it's a red line, but I do know this, that the board has become a hyper-partisan, pro-union entity, and that does not benefit the American people. We saw it in my home state of South Carolina, in my hometown of North Charleston, when the NLRB and the IAM attempted to destroy what was at the time 1,100 jobs at Boeing. Now Boeing represents more than 8,000 jobs in North Charleston because of the success of South Carolina's pro-business, pro-employee, I want to emphasize that, pro-employee environment. And the NLRB and the president simply decided that doesn't fit their tastes. So after more than a year, when we saw the NLRB's general counsel joke about destroying the American economy and call members of Congress names, they finally relented when they realized that South Carolina and the American people would not stand for it. But since then, the NLRB has continued to push policies loved by union bosses, even though it was created to be a non-biased arbiter. So today, we are taking a very rare step, invoking the Congressional Review Act, because the NLRB decided to do union bosses one more favor. The ambush election rule, which the board has now finalized, will allow as few as 10 days to pass between employees filing a petition to unionize and a vote occurring. This rule is perhaps the most pro-big labor action taken by the current administration, which is quite a feat for this administration. Ambush elections hurt the ability of employees to make a well-informed choice on joining a union, as it gives limited time to hear both sides of the debate. The rule also requires an unprecedented amount of an employee's personal information to be given to union representatives, such as personal cell phones and email addresses. The NLRB is also now placing burdensome requirements on employers that unions do not have to follow themselves, providing an unfair advantage to union organizers. In South Carolina, we have seen the potential ramifications that come as a result of a widely partisan NLRB, and this rule simply reinforces the fact that the board must return to acting as the neutral arbiter it was intended to be. But since that does not seem likely anytime soon, as my friends on the left resist efforts that we have, myself and Senator Alexander, have introduced reforms to the board, we find ourselves here today. I'll leave you with just a few notes. One from Brian Hayes, and I'll quote him. The principal purpose for this radical manipulation of our election process is to minimize, or rather to effectively eviscerate, an employer's legitimate opportunity to express its views about collective bargaining. I urge my colleagues to vote no, vote to disapprove of the ambush elections rule, and return workplace decisions to employees, not to big labor and a partisan administration. Just a few weeks ago, we had a hearing in the Health Committee. And sometimes when we have this conversation about what's good for employees versus what's good for employers, that we find a way of taking these two groups of folks and try to put them in competing categories. I asked a very simple question at one of the hearings, and I want to take a few minutes just to walk through what we're expecting of employers as we engage in this new process of ambush elections. And I think you'll see very clearly why we call them ambush elections. For the last 13 or 14 years before entering Congress, I was a small business owner, an entrepreneur, and I thought I had found the American dream, and we were making a profit, we were moving forward, and we were hiring people. And now as I think through, if I were still in business today, what are we asking employers to do in as short of a window as 10 days? With less than 24 employees and no in-house legal counsel, I would have been expected, all within as few as 10 days, to understand what an election petition is, to find a labor attorney in Charleston with NLRB experience, and hopefully NLRB expertise. Learn what can and cannot be said to employees. Figure out which employees are eligible to vote. Submit to the union names of eligible employees, their addresses, personal emails, their cell phone numbers, the work locations, shift information, employee classifications, and ensure all legal arguments are raised at this point in time so that I do not waive my right to use those arguments in the future. All of this must be done with amazing haste and great precision. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking on my right to talk with my employees before an election. My business is being neglected. Bear in mind that employers and entrepreneurs start businesses so that we can actually accomplish a task, not necessarily to defend ourselves in this process. So while we're neglecting our business, incurring substantial legal costs, I have to ask myself one very simple question that I think many people are going to ask themselves the same exact question, and it is simply this: how does this lead to a fair election for any employee or any employer? It seems simple to me that it simply cannot. Madam President, it will not. Thank you.